Arjun, a 32-year-old aspiring entrepreneur, sat in his tiny, dimly lit office. His shoulders slumped under the weight of unpaid bills and rejection emails. His once bright eyes now reflected frustration and exhaustion. He had invested everything into his dream, yet success seemed further away than ever. The flickering desk lamp barely illuminated his cluttered workspace, a silent witness to his struggles. At home, the tension was worse. His father, a retired school teacher, shook his head in disapproval. "Why don't you take a stable job, Arjun?" he asked, frustration evident in his voice. His mother, clad in a simple sari, looked at him with pleading eyes. They weren't against his dreams, but they feared his failure. And every time they questioned him, a small part of his confidence shattered. The few friends who once cheered for him slowly started drifting away. He found himself sitting alone at the neighborhood tea stall, staring into his untouched cup. In the background, his old friends laughed together, oblivious to his loneliness. Doubt crept into his mind. Maybe he had made a mistake. One evening, as Arjun walked back home, he noticed an elderly street vendor struggling to push a heavy cart. Without hesitation, he rushed forward and helped. As they pushed together, the old man smiled and said, "Life is like this cart, Beta. Sometimes you push alone. Sometimes no one helps. But if you stop pushing, it never moves." Something in those words struck Arjun deeply. He realized he was giving up too soon. That night, something changed. Arjun sat at his desk, but this time there was a fire in his eyes. He wrote down every mistake, every lesson. He reorganized his strategy, learned from his failures, and worked harder than ever before. His walls were now covered with sticky notes of motivation. Never give up. Focus. Work smarter. He knew this was his make-or-break moment. Soon the moment arrived. Arjun pitched his idea to a small group of local shop owners. Some listened with interest, others remained skeptical. His hands were steady, his voice filled with passion. He knew he had nothing to lose. For the first time, he wasn't afraid of rejection. Days later, one of those shop owners called him back. "Let's try it," he said, handing Arjun his first ever business deal. Arjun's heart pounded. He shook the man's hand, his fingers trembling with excitement. It was a small deal, but it meant everything. It meant he was no longer just a dreamer. He was an entrepreneur. With his first earnings, Arjun expanded his idea and hired a small team. They worked from a modest office, brainstorming, learning and growing together. He was no longer alone. His dream was becoming reality, one step at a time. Months later, Arjun found himself sitting across from investors who had once ignored him. But today was different. Today they were listening. Today they wanted to invest in his vision. He smiled to himself. Success wasn't about luck. It was about refusing to quit. Years later, Arjun stood in his high-rise office looking out at the sunset over the city. He had built something out of nothing. But more importantly, he had built himself. His journey had been tough, but the struggles had only made the success sweeter. And as he sipped his coffee, he whispered to himself, "Never stop pushing the cart."
Success isn't about how fast you reach the top. It's about how many times you refuse to stay down. If Arjun's story inspired you, remember, your breakthrough is just one step away. Keep pushing forward. This is the Moto 360, bringing you real stories of resilience and motivation. Subscribe for more.